Well, I found an article dating back to July 9th, 2000, the Saskatoon Sun. And it's an article, that one I think I mentioned before, from Vern Clements. WC report seems to point to skewed government policy. I'll just read a little bit of it. If you can probably find it on the internet under the Saskatoon Star-Phoenix, but the Saskatchewan Federation of Labour has warned that the annual provincial average of 15,000 workplace injuries, 25 deaths, and 100 permanent disabilities ranks Saskatchewan as one of the most dangerous places to work in the industrialized world. In 1999, the averages were exceeded. And it goes on to say 31 fatalities, 300 permanent functional impairments, 13,000 injuries involving time off work. Yet the WCB gives rebates and safety grants to employers to reward and encourage safe practice in the workplace. Well, again, I'll say if they're not allowed to report the injuries, if the injured worker is told to keep his mouth shut, it's just a benefit to the businesses. And again, they don't have proper training because they don't care anymore. And it's getting much worse now. They're trying to keep it more quiet about how much they're giving back to these businesses, but they're doing it. Here's an example, $52.2 million operating surplus for 1999. Merit rebate checks to employers totaling $36,000. Well, merit rebate checks. Crazy. Actually, they're giving tens of millions of dollars back every year to businesses. Which leads me to one of the biggest perpetrators of crime in this province was Weyerhaeuser, the pulp mill in Prince Albert. Around this same time, 2000, I mean, it goes on all the time, so what's the matter, there's no big problem there about when you say it, because it's going on as we speak. But Weyerhaeuser in Ontario was fined $254,000 for screwing injured workers. That was a show they did on W5 or Fifth Estate. They all did a few of them back then, but meanwhile, Weyerhaeuser is allowed to sit on the Workers' Compensation Board in Saskatchewan. So I'm talking to, I think at the time it was CJWW, when they were having talk shows back then, and maybe I mentioned to a few of them, but before they decided to cut it out completely or keep me off the air, I asked, why would that be? How can they get fined in Ontario and at the same time sit on the bloody board in Saskatchewan? Oh, well, they're a business. They're allowed to sit on the board. That's bullshit. They're a foreign company. They're an American company, first off. And I've known people in Saskatchewan who've had businesses for years. They've never sat on the board, workers' comp. They've never been asked to, and I think it just boils down to who's got the money to pass under the table. And they want to ensure that they're going to get away with that here, and they did. They did. The sign at the Weyerhaeuser plant up in pulp mill up in PA, another 8,000 days without a time loss accident, which is bullshit because I talked to some people that worked there and they were injured. Some of them were given cushy city inside jobs to keep their mouths shut, and they were paid, and they didn't have to do much, and then they were fired. It's, and the thing is, the ones that did report it, the union wouldn't stand up for them. And they lost their jobs. Malingers, liars, cheats, whatever they could, give them a name, label them with something, I guess. It doesn't matter. We'll get them off. We'll see to it they don't collect and don't get a job again. And then there's the, the facts of this. They talk about DNA. Well, my DNA is how it's indisputable. You can't. DNA is DNA. There's maybe 1 in a billion people or 1 in a trillion people sometimes when you hear about a rapist or a murderer. Well, my DNA is in some operating rooms. But the Workers' Compensation Board and the politicians, all the employees, all the people that had to do with my file that screwed with me, their DNA is all over my file. It's just splattered with their DNA. And every time you look at some of this stuff, you know yourselves, it's, well, it's more than just depressing. I'll say it again, it's a recipe for disaster. Already they're talking to slow down in Canada. 70-some thousand jobs just lost just recently. Well, that's just recently. And then of course the ones who collect unemployment and then don't get it anymore, they're not listed as unemployed. A lot of people don't know that. But once they're off those books, then they're not considered anymore. It's only the ones that are on worker or unemployment insurance that are considered unemployed. So it's going to get much worse here. Meanwhile, the healthcare system is pressed to past the limits. We have all these high-paid jobs at the Alberta, the oil sands, and a lot of those people just lost their jobs just recently. 300 and some Boilermakers, people building the steel tanks and that for the oil sands, they just lost their jobs. That was in Saskatchewan. And those are all high-paying jobs. And the spin-off is their families and the people they deal with, the car dealerships and everything else. But I was told years ago by a Dr. McIver, I should never have seen him, but he did this surgery on my lower spine. First time I saw him, he said that he knew when there was going to be a big strike or a layoff before the general public knew. And he goes on to tell me how his office is full of guys like me all complaining of sore backs. Anyways, less than an hour he said, well, I guess I do have to operate on you, don't I? Well, my mistake was I should have just said, yeah, but not you. I need an operation. I've known that for years, but you're not going to be the one to do it. But he wouldn't give me a report unless I paid him $700. Yeah. I finally did get the report, but it didn't matter. The compensation board wouldn't pay me because they said I didn't complain enough. You didn't want to get threatened with jail and everything else. You know, like they sick you on one of their goddamn doctors who threatens. I got that in my file. Threatened me with RCMP. Yelled at me, called me a wimp and a wuss and every other goddamn thing. People in the hallway were listening to this. I walked out there and called them a quack, and they were just leaned back in their chairs. Their eyes were bulging out of their heads. But that was Dr. Noble. He's retired and living the life in Victoria. He's another one I'd like to talk to before he goes. But I'll see him after. He caused me nothing but grief. And I did see him once other time in 1980. That was in 76. Or 77, I mean, when I saw him. And then in 70... no, it would have been 1980. I saw him at the city hospital when I collapsed. My sister drove me down there. My legs just buckled on me, and it was progressing. And there was an intern, I don't know what he was, a doctor, learning doctor or something. Anyways, he put me in a gurney, and I was laying in this room, and they were checking me over. And then next thing I hear is a voice, a familiar voice. Well, it's the head doctor on shift that day. It's Dr. Noble. He looked at me over his glasses at the end of my bed there, looking at the chart, and he turned to the doctor and he says, kick him out. Just like that. So, he remembered me. Again, he admitted years later, 1990, that he didn't know why he did all this to me, but he admits he did it. He's getting a nice pension. One thing about it, hopefully he's retired, he's not practicing medicine on anybody else. Anyways, they missed me today, but it's a weekend, so I'll see what I'm supposed to find out more on Monday what's going on, but I think I hear them putting the bolt back in, so lock and load, I guess. Anyways, I'll talk to you later.